Namo Buddhaya, sir.
Namo Buddhaya. So what we stopped is on Patvi, Apo, and Tejo. Okay. So we also covered about the warmth, energy, what it provides. Then due to Tejo, there is aging. So what a person thinks, a normal person thinks, is to how to stop aging. So what does he do to stop aging? Can you think what does he do to stop aging? What does a normal person do to stop aging? Other than putting some chemicals on his face or whatever to cover the aging, what else can he do to take care of aging?
Do regular exercise to make it fit himself.
What's that?
Doing a regular exercise to make him fit
Yes,
himself.
yes, exercise. So basically, two things will reduce aging. It can't stop aging. One is exercise, one is diet. The more you eat, the more you age. The less you eat, the less you age. But that doesn't mean that if you don't eat, you'll not age. So the basic aim, even in the Buddha Dhamma, is to eat less because you age faster. You were to keep on eating and drinking. The more you put to the fuel, the more it burns. Simple. The lesser you put, the lesser it burns. So, is there a way one can reduce? And that's the reason you have so many diets. But they found out that if you are on a good diet, you will stay healthy. What is the meaning of healthy? It means the aging is reduced. If the aging progresses faster, the organs start to deteriorate. It's directly connected. More one ages, the organ starts to deteriorate because it will accumulate sodium and other things which going to make it worse. Okay. So there's a calcium intake, and that if it increases, it breaks the arteries. So one person should look at exercising, and so there's a heating up. Remember, you have to heat up the body. When you heat up the body, the fat gets reduced. So a normal person always does something. He generates more energy. They can generate energy. The more energy you generate, the more it becomes better. One second. So the more we eat, the more we age. The more you exercise, again you age. So you should have an optimal exercising. You can't be exercising too much, or you can't be exercising too less. So I'm talking from Putujana point of view. If you go to a dietitian, he will give you or she will give you what diet needs to be taken. Why is that? Because if we eat more, you age more. If there's no exercise, again, the body starts disintegration. So basically you need to ensure that enough enough food, not too much, not too less, is maintained. Okay, so if we have too much food, it burns. So it creates toxins because it can't be thrown out of the system. So when it can't be thrown out of the system, it will accumulate. And that in English is called as toxins. And in Sanskrit or people doing Ayurveda, ama means putrefied things in the body. So the toxins will reduce the efficiency of the organs. So they are no longer efficient. So when they're not efficient, they don't perform. So the aging is faster. Okay. Main thing about Tejo element is energy. Please don't forget it. It's Ojas. So if you don't have Ojas, then there's no energy. So the person feels tired. Then there is metabolic issues. So what is metabolism? Metabolism means at which rate it is going to burn. So there's no burning. The fuel is there, not enough fire. So it decays. So that metabolic disease is diabetes. Okay. Because the sucrose level in the body is more, or the glucose is more. So the blood is carrying more sugar than what it should be. So it causes inflammation. So sugar is one of the main ingredient for inflammation. Okay, that's we need. And the rheumatoid arthritis or any one of these or any kind of issues that you get starts with sugar, accumulation of sugar, because it's not getting burnt. So as a normal person, why a person is happy about tejo dhatu is because it gives him energy. Okay. So when you don't have adequate sun, you don't feel energized. You feel sleepy. Okay. Because sun, as in the plants, which require photosynthesis, which helps in photosynthesis, here it does something more extraordinary, more better than just photosynthesis. Because this nourishes the body. So there's nourishment happening in the body, like what we discussed yesterday. So it nourishes the body with nutrients. Ojas is nutrients, so it will utilize the nutrients. The body becomes good. So a person delights in Tejo as in Apo. If you've understood Tejo, we can move forward to Vayu. Any questions on what we have covered so far on from Patavi, Apo, Tejo, from a normal person perspective? So there's delighting in Patavi, there is delighting in Apo, there's delighting in Tejo. And there are 15 in Tejo, 13 in Apo, 10 in Patavi, like what we covered. Hope you remember all of them. Any questions before we move next? Okay. Yes, Saryu, you have something? No. Okay. So now let's come to the next section is why you. Apart from the 10 things, what do you think are there in Vayu? Correct. Movement. Okay. What next? Yes, it brings smell.
It's degenerate faster, sir.
Degenerate faster. What degenerates? How does Vayu degenerate?
Yes, why degenerate?
No, no. How does Vayu degenerate? From a normal person, we are talking about Kalpana.
Order, order smell is coming from this.
No, odor is coming correct. That is coming from Vayu only. That is what Aryu has put. But how does it disintegrate?
Due to microorganisms, sir.
No, 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 no. Nothing to do with that. So the Gandha odor is brought by Vayu. What else do you find? Cooling. Like Veena had put a right one. It is helps in drying anything from clothes to anything. You want to dry, you require air. Otherwise, you can't dry it. It doesn't dry. What else? Yes, sir. You.
It brings oxygen.
Air has oxygen. That is correct. Otherwise, no living being will be there. It doesn't bring in oxygen. Air has oxygen. Yes, it supports life. Air is soothing, but if it is like
carbon
a,
dioxide part helps in photosynthesis.
pardon?
Photosynthesis, sir. Carbon dioxide present in the air helps in photosynthesis.
No, photosynthesis is sun, basically, not nothing to do with air. Yes, it will soothe. So there is a lot of craving when there is a soothing effect. The soothing effect is part of Vayu. Yes. Yes, sir, you go ahead.
Oh. I think it helped pressurize.
It has pressure. Air has pressure, but I'm talking from a normal person. Don't look it from some other angle. There is pressure. Obviously, there is pressure in air. And that's the reason we say air pressure, right? Everybody knows that there's a pressure. Like in the tires, you have a pressure, which is air. There's going to be pressure.
Generating energy. I'm talking of windmills, like
I couldn't hear you properly, Anjali.
windmills, they require air in generating energy.
At least I couldn't understand what you're trying to say.
Talking of windmills require air to run and that produce energy.
Another thing is wind can generate energy. Windmills. If you have, you can generate energy. So Vayu can be used just like solar or sun or heat, thermo. You can have air to generate energy because there is motion. Anything that has motion has energy. And heat also has energy. So you can use kinetic waves to generate energy. That's the reason infrared and all the waves are part of heat as well as air. It's called as air waves. So we have electromagnetic waves. If you take that, you have radio waves with certain frequency. Then we have microwaves with certain frequency. Then we have infrared waves with certain frequency. Then there is visible light waves with certain frequency. And we have ultraviolet waves. Then we have X-rays and gamma rays. And if you take mechanical waves, then you have sound waves, surface waves, seismic waves. Yep. Then if you take guided waves, then you have transmission line waves and fiber optics. And all of them, in one way or the other, uses both heat and air. All waves have both of them. So you can communicate like if you take Bluetooth, it's coming on waves for transmission. So where does the wave get formed? How does the wave get formed? Any idea?
It generates from friction.
Yes, but it goes like this. So then you require three things. One is that it should have a disturbance. For the disturbance to happen, you should have a space. And you should have air. So it creates oscillations. And these oscillations turning around is called vibrations. Is vibration. It's vibrating. So then it creates heat. And that heat is transported by the air from one point to another. And there is no visible matter. And when this happens, we have mechanical waves, which is created out of air, water mainly. Okay, water also has waves. If you don't know, it has huge waves, and we know there are waves on water, right? And how did that create? It created by air. Air hits water and it makes it move faster, right? So it has waves. So there is particles in the medium, and when these particles move around, can be solid, can be liquid, can be air itself. All of these three creates disturbances, and energy is generated, heat. Yes, Saryu.
Is it true that the sound is carried by the wind element in that
Yes.
sense?
Yes. Because it's in space. So space is occupied by wind, if you don't know. Wherever there's space, there's wind. How? You take your body, all joint pains, what you're getting is because accumulation of wind in space. Because in each bone, like this, there is space. So the wind occupies that place. So there's movement, there's rubbing. When there's rubbing, there's friction. When there's friction, it's called inflammation. Right? It's inflamed, meaning it's becoming hot. That's the reason it's called as inflammation in medicine. It's flamed. Meaning it's got heated up. How did it get heated up? Because of air, friction. Without air, there's no friction. Go ahead.
So I'm just curious, if a person sits in meditation for a good amount of time and the knees start paining, it's because the air is getting heated up?
Air is stuck. Air is stuck in the space. And that's getting heated up. It expands, right? The nature of air is to expand and contract and move. So it's not able to move. So if it's not able to move, it will expand. If it will expand, it doesn't have space. So the bones, which they're supposed to be far away, now they are together like this, being pressed on the nerves. So there is pain.
But if the air is not able to go out, why would the bone be touching each other now?
You just have to refresh your botany and anatomy if you have studied. Right? If you have not studied it, I suggest you do that, because every bone, the joints are not stuck. They're not held like this. They're space. If you don't know that, you can't. Otherwise, you can't move it. If you want to move it, there should be space. If there is space, there is air. If the air is in the normal flow, then there's no problem. You will not have pain. If not, the nerve centers are where? It is within the bone. So when it presses, there's a pain. Yes.
Yeah, I can understand what you just described, but you also said the air gets trapped inside, right?
Absolutely. Try it out. Even in nature, it is like that. You take any medium, you take any glass, tumbler, okay? You lock it like this, it gets stuck because the air is stuck in space. Now you can't remove it. Take two utensils, put it one with another, try pulling it. You won't be able to do that because that medium is stuck. Have you ever watched it?
Yeah, that I do know. I'm just curious.
It's all the same, Ari. Your human body is no different than all the 5 elements. So if they are in a proper way, then there is no problem. If they are not, only the nerves have conscious experiences. So the consciousness is moving in the nerves. So the nerve center gets agitated with that. So it creates what? It creates pain. And in the brain, you have brain receptor, the pain receptor. It receives the pain and indicates there is a pain in this place. Right? Yes.
I guess my only doubt is that why would the wind getting trapped inside
Talk to a
make the
doctor.
bone even?
Talk to a
No,
doctor.
no.
No,
Can I
wait
finish
for a
the question?
second. Wait for a second. There is a doctor in our call, so she will explain you far better than what I can explain.
Yeah. Let me ask the question then. My
Yes.
question is why would the wind being trapped in the joint make the joint further touch? Because there's anyways air trapped inside. Why would it make it further touch?
My dear friend, the air expands. Do you ever know science or not, Ari? Have you ever tried boiling water? It expands. Have you ever experimented in life? I don't know whether you experimented or not. When you heat up something, see what is inflammation? When they use the word inflammation, what is inflammation? There's some flame, right? When there is flame, the air expands because of that. Air has a quality of expansion. So when it expands, the space is removed. It's occupied by what? It's occupied by air, and air is heating up. So what happens when it was supposed to have this much of space? When there is space, there's no problem. But when the space is occupied by something, it starts expanding and there is no place for it to move. Obviously, it will pain because the next bone is hitting. This is making it go up. So how can it go up? See, what is arthritis? Have you ever studied something? You just learn. The meaning arthritis is non-movement. You're not able to move. Why? Because there is an expansion. The bone, as it should hold it is not able to hold like that because there's a dryness of the oil which is there between these joints is no longer there. So what happens? That is taken over by space. So it starts drying it up. Space, the air dries up, like what Veena said, right? It is used for drying. So without air, there's no dryness. And so your skin will become dry because of air. First, you should know, Aryu, your body is made of the same 5 elements, means not just an imaginary 5 elements. What is happening outside is happening inside. There's no difference. So when the sun is scorching, there is an expansion and air expands. So it creates more heat. Right? So when there's expansion, there is what would happen? You will have water droplets coming because space, air, heat, water, and that we call it as humidity. It's humid because it's becoming what? It's becoming vaporized. So the entire place will be humid. So you'll start to sweat. The reason why your body is sweating is because humid. It's humid. How did this happen? Space was space. The volume of air increased and it started heating it up because there is friction, movement. When there is movement, it inflames. It flames the place. So the condensed water becomes more vaporized. So if you were to stay in the beach areas, you sweat. The reason you sweat is because there is humidity. So we call that as sweat, but actually what is happening is your body is also reacting to what is outside. So the space is reduced by this air and it's heating up. Because of that, it's getting vaporized. Got the point, Aryu? This is how it works. What works outside works exactly inside. It's not an imaginary 5 elements we are talking about, or just a Buddha Dhamma of 5 elements. No. That's the reason Buddha Dhamma is nature law. What is happening out is happening here instantaneously. It's not that it's going to take time. Instantaneously. Write an example for you. I went to Chennai. Chennai has a beach. I am from a dry place. What is dry? Dry means that it doesn't vaporize. That's the reason it's called as a dry place. What's a wet place? Means it vaporizes. Simple. So when you have a beach, it vaporizes because there is two things: moisture in the clouds or in the sky more than anything. So there's condensation and heating happening at the same time. There's a lot of humidity. So when you go from a dry place, that means you don't have that vaporization, and you go to a vaporization place, instantaneously the pores of your skin are such that the water oozes out from there because the atmosphere is pulling out water. So you sweat like crazy. Ashwin has been used to staying in Chennai, so he doesn't feel it much than me. I'm coming from a dry climate. Suddenly I'm exposed to this atmosphere, which not my kind. What happens? There's a lot of sweat. So even if I were to walk for a little distance, I'm sweating like crazy because atmosphere is pulling out. Which atmosphere? Air. It's pulling out what? Water. Space, air, fire, water, heat, water. So when it gets heated up because of the movement, so water comes out. Now, in the water, when we say water, it also means fluid, liquid. So what does he say? Synovial fluid in that 12 parts of the liquid, synovial fluid. That fluid is dried out by air. So when the synovial fluid is dried out, the softness which was supposed to be there is removed by air. So what happens? The bones become thing like this because the air has removed the space, and in its place it has gone and sat. So now there is no space left. So either it will push up like this, which will hit to your hip region, or a hip will hit down and then it hits this bone, like in the leg. So the bone starts to become powder because there is no lubrication. It's rubbing like this. So when it rubs, the bone becomes powder. So there's a space created in the bone. And when the space is created in the bone, that space is also utilized by the air. So that whole thing is called as arthritis. Got the point? So you need to understand all of these elements in a proper way. Yes, Saryu.
Yeah, I understand like 70%. But initial question: why in meditation the air got heated up in the first place again?
Boss, I don't understand. I explained you so much. It's a body, my dear friend. It doesn't know you are meditating or you're shitting. It doesn't know, right? It only knows that if there is air, more air, it gets jammed in the joints. That's it. That's all it knows. Why are you sitting like that? Because you are inflaming it. If you keep one posture, there's a flaming. Have you ever not heard this word called inflammation?
Yeah, I have heard. I just the question is,
No, my
what is
my
inflaming it?
question to you, Aryu, is have you not heard a word called inflammation? Have you
I
ever
have,
thought what is inflammation?
I have heard, and I understood from you is the heat getting,
Exactly. So, how did heat happen? There should be something which is rubbing, and air rubs, right? And that's what it does, it moves. So, when it moves, it rubs. When it robs the space. So, what was space is no longer a space, it's filled with air. Like in this room, Ariu, there is air, right? So when the sun comes up, the air gets heated up? No, the air starts moving because it expands because of the heat. So what does air do? It not only moves, there is a contraction and an expansion, right? Please understand from a very scientific perspective that we all have studied these in our schools. If you forget it, you will not know how it happened. So air has an ability to expand and contract at the same time. Like it's winter. What happens in winter? It contracts. In summer, it expands. Right? So when it contracts, what it is doing? It is condensing. In this condensation, what happens? The air becomes cold. Why? Because water, instead of spreading out, it's condensed. So what happens? It gets colder because the heat is less. Just watch it, Ariu. And in winter, if you sit, okay, let's say, it gets jammed faster because it's contracting. Here it's not expanding, it's more contracting. So when you sit in one posture, it gets contracted. And when it gets contracted, it is pressing on the nerve. So when it presses on the nerve, there is pain. Yes.
So I guess the first condition is that the wind is not moving properly. That's why it all gets started.
Absolutely. Wind job is to move and expand, contract. If it's expanding, you have a problem. If it's contracting, you have a problem. Yes.
And that's why if the energy system is moving very well, even with, closed knees, there's no pain. It's just, it's fluid.
Why? Because that space is maintained. There is no pain anywhere in the body. If the space is removed by something, then you have a pain. So when you run, you're heating it up. The space is removed because now the air expands. So why does a person after jogging feel pain in the body? Because it's got inflamed, it's burning. And when it heats up, the air expands. And when it expands, it puts pressure on the nerves. Then there is the nerve receptors, or the brain, in the brain, the receptors says that this is pain in this place. So you then have to take rest, meaning you stop the motion. When you stop the motion, contraction happens. So the heat is now reduced. As the heat reduces, the contraction happens. And when the contraction happens, the space gets reclaimed. Pain goes away. Simple. Simple physics. Got it? Are you? So in nature, we need to see all of this. Then we understand how things works in the body. So as a Putujana, he goes scientific. Actually, the scientific temper starts in a person because he sees this and he is excited. See, you have a burette. and you were to burn or you were to evaporate a fluid, you would have done all of this experiment, and then you have an empty jar. In the empty jar, you put a fluid, and that fluid has a viscosity. That viscosity, when it change the viscosity, it does something else. So when you put a burner, start heating that fluid will lose its viscosity. Then what happens? It evaporates. It goes back into space. Then what happened? It's expanded. The air has expanded that fluid to a level that it gets evaporated. The water gets expanded. And when it gets contracted, we call it as ice. And when it is expanded, we call it as water. That fluid is called water because it's expanded. It contracts. It's ice. So vivata samvata is also the same. It's contraction, expansion, right? Just see this. If you see it in ice, you can see it in the entire universe. It's made out of the same thing. So we don't have to remember Pali words and all of that. If we know science perfectly, what we have studied in physics, chemistry, biology, that's sufficient. You'll exactly know what's happening. And that's exactly what is happening at you. Nothing else is happening. So we are talking 4 elements. 4 elements are part of nature. They have a natural law. You can't change that law. That's the reason it's called as Mahabhuta, because it knows it is exactly what it should be. And hence yesterday I took up that topic of law of thermodynamics. You need to know in and out of thermodynamics. Even as a Puttujana, you need to know the thermodynamics because of the entire world running on thermodynamics, on quantum mechanics. Whatever is happening is either theory of relativity, thermodynamics, and quantum mechanics. There's nothing else which is happening in nature. Any questions? So first, as you understand inflammation. Inflammation is something which expands, just heats up and it expands. That's the reason it's called pain. Oh, you got an inflammation. That's what the doctor says. What he's trying to say is that that place is reclaimed by something else. So you have to reduce inflammation. Like sugar, why it causes inflammation? Because it expands. So it becomes the blood becomes thick because it has reduced the motion. It is making it more and more solid. It's becoming like glue. So when the glue is running between the pipes, what happens? There is pressure. Which pressure? Air. Air is creating pressure because it's blocked. When it's blocked, you have pressure. Water has pressure because air is moving water or a fluid. There is pressure. And that pressure is called blood pressure. How much it should be. How much it should be pressurized. Just like in the flight. They say this cabin is pressurized. You need to understand all of this. I'm not talking about you only, Aryo. Everyone sitting here should know the basic laws of motion. And that's the reason we have that in science. So that we understand what's happening. When we sit in the flight, the cabin is pressurized for a particular temperature. Otherwise, outside temperature will be minus 37 degree centigrade. So your the cabin is pressurized to 25 degrees centigrade. Why? As you go up, the pressure reduces. As you come down, the pressure increases because air has an expansive and contracting ability. So at 37,000 feet or 40,000 feet, the air is different as opposed to air what you're having it here. Okay, so let's say we go to 42 or 43,000 feet is when he flies to fly between Bangalore and San Francisco. And Mount Everest is at 29,000 feet. It's almost like almost 15,000 feet more. Is flying. So there is air, but it is completely not having that much of pressure. So he has to maintain the pressure. The fuel burning will be more, but you can reach faster because there is no much obstruction. Yes.
So are you saying the pressure and temperature, they're almost same thing, almost?
No, I think you never got it. That's what I feel. I think you need to learn something in science. Maybe you should refresh it on air pressure and temperature. I think you are slightly weaker on that side. That's what I feel. Because if I were to take this, it becomes a science class now. So we have to go to the physics and chemistry and how bonding happens, chemical bonding and all of that. Okay, so let's keep it for some other day. 1 second. So basically, Aryu, just to conclude on this, otherwise this will go forever. Just to put a stop to this, air expands, contracts. Simple. If it touches somewhere, it creates heat. That heat, it generates in the body. Because of that expansion, there is going to be a pain. And when there is pain, that tissue will expand. When that expands, there is no space left. When there is no space left, this air will irritate it more and more by rubbing it. Then it creates even more friction. And that frictional thing is called as inflammation. Got it? Let's stop it there. Otherwise, it's going to be, I think I'll be spending another 2 hours with you on science, explaining the basic concepts. So I suggest you refresh your basic concepts on physics, chemistry. It's very good for you. So let's move out. Okay. So what air does is that it will occupy space. That's simple thing I could tell everyone here. And when it occupies space, it can do 2 things. It can be like a breeze, which you feel very happy. Or it can be like a wind, whirlwinds. It whirls itself up because it has the ability to turn back. It turns back. It turns back. So it keeps on rotating. Air rotates. When it rotates, it moves the particles. So when you are gulping off the saliva, air is also there. Otherwise, there's no movement. So every movement, that is circulation, what we call a blood circulation and all circulations, including stools, that means say feces, That coming out is due to air, because they had to have movement. If there is no movement, that's the reason it's called a bowel movement. Why? Because it requires air. If the air is stuck, and then what happens? It dries up. So that state is called as constipation. When it removes the fluid totally from that thing, it becomes dry. Air has ability of drying. Okay. And what Veena said in the chat is correct, that it dries. So for you to dry a cloth, you require air. It doesn't dry. Okay. Now, when a person sees air, can he see air? No. He can feel the air. He can't see. Can a person see Patavi? Yes. Can a person see Apo? Yes. Can a person see Tejo? Yes, as in fire. But can a person see air? No. But he can feel the air. He knows this is air. And he knows this is mine. How? The breeze is mine. I am enjoying the breeze. It's a nice breeze, as though it is his, because in the body there is air. So he makes it as delighting. I'm delighting in a nice air. So let's say it's very hot season and I go to Alaska, which is cold. And the cold air, when it touches my skin, I feel really happy, because I've come from heat region. I needed something cold. So that's how we can see. So we get attached to air. And air also has oxygen. So for breathing, for body, you require oxygen. So you should have oxygenated air. So if it is carbon dioxide more than oxygen, CO2, then what happens? You will have reduced oxygen, which makes it fatigue. So you know for sure that if you don't have air, you can't breathe. Like emissions, vehicle emissions. If you stand in front of it as the diesel or petrol burns, it cuts oxygen. That means the number of O2 which should be there is replaced by carbon, becomes CO2 instead of H2O or just O2. So 2 atoms of oxygen has now carbon associated with it. Carbon is a burnt out fuel. So there's no oxygen. Basically, carbon cuts oxygen. Then there's no oxygen. So you know, or every being knows, that it dies without oxygen. So the trees generate oxygen and takes in carbon dioxide. That's how the law works. The more the trees, the more the oxygen. The less the trees, the less the oxygen. Okay? That's the basic law. So this movement between the trees or the plant to the animals and humans and back to the tree, how this synthesis is between the tree and the plant and the animals and birds and humans for survival. So he gets associated with trees and plants because from that he gets oxygen. So there is an attachment for Patvi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, especially Vayu, because there is oxygen. He knows he's going to die without oxygen. Yes, Mangala. Mangala, I can't hear you. You are on mute in case you're speaking.
Talking about air and oxygen, it also dissolves in water. That is how the fish survive.
Yes, because H2O means it has oxygen. Correct.
It has oxygen, and that is why daily, even if you have a fish pond at home, I mean that tank at home, you have to bubble the oxygen, the air through it, so that the oxygen is available for the fish. Otherwise,
Exactly.
they die.
Exactly.
So that is
Yes.
one more way in which you can see the activity of air.
Yes,
And
yes. I had forgotten that. Thanks for reminding. Yes, all
yeah,
amphibians and all forms of life require oxygen. The fish or whales or any of the sea creatures also require oxygen. And in water, there is oxygen. In fact, like,
so
yes,
yeah.
go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, Mangala.
So can I tell you something something interesting like this at the time of Buddha, when he was there during his period, the historians have now recently found that sea trade was very high from India to even the Red Sea and Egypt.
Correct.
And the Indians, I mean, the people then in India, and I mean, that is how Buddhists knew. I mean, everybody in India knew about science, they were advanced. And they have found, historians have found 125 ships, evidence of 125 ships parked in Berinke in Syria and Egypt during the time of Buddha. So they use the wind energy during the monsoons to carry the ships to Egypt, and then after the monsoons were over, the winds were in the reverse direction. Then the ships returned with all the material. So they
Exactly.
even transported uh, elephants and horses and all from India, and then wealth gold from there back to India. I mean, this is wind energy, which you talked about. I'm reading a book on, I mean, and it talks a lot about Buddhism. I'm written by a historian, um, Dalrymple. He writes about Indian history. There is a new book, and a lot of Buddhism and the science that was prevailing there has been written in the book. I thought it was very appropriate
Yes,
for
yes.
everybody
Indeed.
to know that they were not things that have been written by Buddha are just not in the air, or it is not mythology. It is very scientific.
Absolutely.
That is
Absolutely. So actually it is, if we really see from isotopes to whatever we name it, all there in Buddha teachings. Maybe not the same Latin words what they use, but 100% the same. So if we are on Buddha teaching, you are already on science, 100%.
Yes, that is what I wanted to say. That when we are dealing with Buddha's teachings, it is all. I mean, I feel it now. I've realized, that it is all evidence based. It is. He has used his brain power and his dialogues, and the suttas are all dialogues which is to take out scientific evidences for what he has passed on to us generation.
Yes,
That is
absolutely. Okay, I need to attend a meeting of the office, so we'll meet tomorrow with more on air. This another class will go on Vayu before we move into Akasha. That I need to cover to complete the Bhuta, which I might do it once I land in the US. Then I'll be sitting next to Aryu and doing it. Okay, all right. Good day to everyone then. Bye bye.